You want to hear the real story behind the rock artists, the albums, and the songs that have become the soundtrack of your life, straight from the legends who lived them? I'm Adam Reeder, the Professor of Rock, and on the Professor of Rock podcast, we go deep into the heart of the music that defines us and our greatest memories. Exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes moments, and the untold truths of rock's greatest hits, told by the artists themselves, stories you won't find anywhere else. If music moves you, this is your backstage pass. Subscribe now to the Professor of Rock podcast.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Oh, hello there. I'm Sue Minahan, and this is Talk Cosmos. Today is October 12th. We are definitely in the fall season here on the Northern Hemisphere and the spring down in the Southern. Our panel will be Planet Buzz, and we are contemplating. Aha, here we all are. Hello, Laura. Hello, Sean. Yeah, I didn't hear our little intro for... Or maybe I did. Okay, well, whatever I heard and didn't hear, here we are. And it's sort of amazing because I feel like we're between the bridge with Neptune, the furthest, way out there, just before the Plutons, or the dwarf planets with Pluto. And it's just retrograde into, about to approach Pisces. So we're between that bridge of the seed point of Aries and the watery realms. Well, I need to introduce Sean. Sean is our guest for today, Sean Kelley, and he was instrumental with Tarot.com and a marketing specialist, a speaker, a lecturer. He's spoken down at the Tucson Guild that they have there for NCG. I think it's NCGR. I don't know.
It's its own entity as far as.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a thriving, wonderful one. So, and we have Laura Tad, who is with us monthly, and myself. Laura's a Ph.D. and we'll find out more. Okay. Am I in Neptune or what yet? Well, hello and good morning.
Yeah. Well, morning for you. I'm on the East Coast, so it's evening on my end of my part of the world.
We do spread from East to West Coast with Sean near Mount Shasta and myself in Hawaii. That's right. Well, perhaps we can get our slides up. Thank you. And we will just begin this focus. Here we have Sean Kelley at evolutionaryastrology.com, Dr. Tad at Mythic Sky Astrology, and she has her YouTube as well, and myself, Talk Cosmos. And of course, we have the playlists on. Oh, and my introductions. Yes, Sean has also worked with many of the renowned astrologers, Kelly Fox, Jan Spiller, Henry Seltzer, Michael Luton. So I'm glad you're with us. And really, this talk began because in March, when Neptune ingressed Aries, Sean was with us. It was it just started all these outer planets ingressing, and we were inspired to continue. So people might check that out with the playlists. Let's talk about Neptune in its own sign, the modern ruler of Pisces, the collective unconscious. Thoughts here?
Yeah, well, I think, we were all spent the last several years with Neptune being in Pisces, right? It's a 14 and change, roughly, year cycle, right? Because it's about 163 years or something around the zodiac. So we've been pretty familiar with this energy for over a decade, but it dipped, in its cycle. So Neptune ingressed into Aries very briefly earlier this year. It went retrograde this summer, and now he's making his way, dipping a toe back in Pisces, but just
for the
barely.
last time, right?
And
Yes.
so we're revisiting this energy. And Neptune, whenever a planet is in the sign that it is seen to be related to archetypally, it's pretty happy there because there's no conflict in terms of archetypal relationship. And so it amplifies these energies. So we get this amplification as Neptune's going back in terms of this dreamy, unconscious energy that is both Pisces and Neptune. So people might be experiencing more potent dreams from a dream time perspective.
I have.
Right. But it can also be dreams in terms of imagination and dreaming
Visions.
Something.
Yes.
It's not just the dream time in terms of REM, that it governs both sort of being able to really envision possibility and call into possibility things as well.
Thank you. That is the best part. Yes, indeed. It is that altered state of consciousness. You indicated on, because these were partly your slides here, that we've augmented. And truth and timelessness. That's a fascinating part about Neptune, particularly because it's inching towards the sky in February when it joins Saturn of boundaries. Neptune is that beyond. There isn't any boundaries or time limit. And
Sean, feel free to jump in at any time, but I think in terms of truth in the Neptunian Pisces sense, I think about it as universal truth.
Yes, absolutely.
Not
good. Yep.
The logical law truth or practical linear, that would be more in its polarity of Virgo.
Mankind. Right.
That's that concretizing of Virgo truth of like, oh, here's the logical how we got there. But Neptunian Piscean truth is universal. It is timeless truth.
Yes, it is absolutely. Yes, exactly. It is.
This is as an integration. We all got to back to the point of like an ingressing into Aries for a short time. We all got this kind of renewed sense of a spiritual warrior, and now it's like going back into Pisces where it feels super comfortable. It kind of maybe take some of like what that taste was and say, okay, how can I flavor that recipe to be more in alignment with my truth, right? So we're talking about truth, and that's where, and I find, to kind of, Aries is that spark of a start, and here we get this incredible opportunity to hop in there and kind of understand what that looks like, and to go, okay, whoa, maybe the way I want to start things with my new spiritual journey, I might want to kind of maybe revisit some of the truth before I make that leap again. And
I think
Neptune ingress is really that's an opportunity for.
Yes, that is the gift, I feel. And of course, that'll start here. We'll show on, whoops. How come I did that one? Well, at any rate, yes, it will be. It'll be October 22nd. And it is this visit because it lasts all the way until January 26th. And it will be this opportunity to find out what's working. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and I think when anything is retrograde, there is that sort of general idea, and particularly then if the retrograde is including multiple signs or two signs.
All of them are, yes, right now.
Well, not, but a retrograde that includes two signs, there's something we didn't get previously.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go back and say like, oh, we spent 14 years in this energy, but we didn't fully understand it. And so we've got to visit it again before we can really move forward. And this idea of like, you have to go back to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's right. Yep. Well, the Sabian symbols are with a system. They're imageries with a spiritual connotation to understand further another element. And this happens to be the very last of the 360 because they're 30 degrees and it gets rounded off. So it is called the 30th degree. You can look at that. There's Dane Ruchar. It has a lot. And of course, it started with
Mark
Other
Anthony
is
Jones.
right, and there's current ones. It's a majestic rock formation, this stone face, resembling a face. So, and I'm paraphrasing it here, but it's idealized by a child, a boy, who takes it as the ideal of greatness, and growing up begins to emulate it, look like it. So it's a rather a fascinating idea of, I know in the Plato philosophies, there was always this between Socrates and Plato. I don't know which was which, but you see the circle, you see the moon, therefore you know the circle. You see a circle, therefore you see the perfection of what the moon is. I mean, in other words, how do you get, but the idea is that this is the perfection of the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, do you have ideas? I know you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Captivated.
We went through this here. This was pretty incredible to me what the Sabian symbol is, because it's really the final kind of like vision that you have before you create yourself. You know, this is the very end of the zodiac. It is what I refer to as the garbage collector, because it's going to take everything and flush it away before Aries can start. Well, what does that vision look like when you flush it all away? When when you take what you've learned and now you're going to start anew. Well, what is that? What is that first bullet? Capacity for self-transformation. I mean, that's really speaks to me at 30, at the 29th degree of Pisces, or 30 Pisces for the Sabian symbol here. And the seeds, and I think it's kind of funny.
Laura was just mentioning, right? Mm-hmm.
Seeds comes to light here, with the Sabian symbol, because there's a quote I believe we'll get to here in a moment that really speaks to like, God, getting your wings clipped, but it's the best thing that could have ever happened to you. They tried to bury us. They did not know we were seeds. And I think that this victimhood piece, I think it speaks to Pisces and its self-sacrificing nature, and transforming into Aries. We're at that apex of a point where that transformation happens, and it turns that into agency. And I think that is just one of the most incredible things in the universe.
It is. Yeah, right. Laura, I know you thankfully remembered this quote. So I'd love to hear any other further ideas here.
I mean, in that idea of, because the burying can be that unconscious, that collective, right? So like, even like what's hidden, what's unseen. And then, right, that idea of like the seeds that bloom, that poke through the soil when we get into Aries, that in the astrological calendar, it is the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And so in this, that all of the 29th degrees, all the anaretic degrees are in this liminal space. But I think with Pisces, it is the most liminality you could possibly be in, right? and Jung talked about liminal space, and is that it's a threshold. It's that space between rooms, that if you're standing on the threshold of a doorway, you've left one room, you're not yet in the next.
True bridge, yes.
And so we are in this in-between world, and Neptune sort of hangs out here in its retrograde. It doesn't get not even past 29
degrees.
29 for the whole of its ingress back into Pisces. And so for the next several months, we are in this space of liminality, which can be disorienting, particularly in Pisces, because Pisces can be disorienting. But I think it also means it has anything is possible, particularly at the very end of Pisces.
Yes.
This is that moment, seconds before birth, anything is possible.
Mm.
And so what do we want to create? What do we want to co-create as a world, in your own life, in your community, in your family, globally? What do we want to create? Because we will be hanging out until January in this liminal space of potential.
Yeah.
And then it ingresses back into Aries and things can be given birth.
Yes. And when I made that earlier comment, just so our audience recognizes, and I said all of them retrograde, my thought was that Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are retrograde. Jupiter later will be, and then Uranus will go direct, I believe. And then Mercury pardon me?
Pluto.
Will turn in a few days. Yes, that's right. On the 14th, it goes direct. Well, for those folks, just to work to remember, and we'll bring up a few ideas too on a collective basis, but March 30th, just before when it ingressed into Aries, was the last time it was at 29 at the very end of Pisces. And it will be on the 22nd in Eastern time at 6 a.m, just 3.5 minutes after that. And on January 26th, when Saturn and Neptune are really going closer together until they meet in February on the 20th. So here again is a little bit of a timeline. Neptune actually went retrograde in Aries at 2 degrees 10 minutes on July 4th, just before the United States had on its little birthday. And then, as we've spoken, it will go retrograde into Pisces on the 22nd. And December 10th, it goes direct in Pisces, and January 26th, it goes back into Aries to stay until, and the last thought here, that March 31st, that's just after the equinox, spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, it will be out of its shadow path. So we have a bit of a transformation during this time. Let's dive into the chart a little bit for March 30th, and then we have a few points to remember. We won't dwell on this a long time, but this was March 30th when it ingressed, and that was the time that we first spoke together, Emerging Truth. That was on the playlist for the Planet Buzz, for those people that want to check it out, because it was a powerful one. But as we see, it was close to the spring equinox, because here we have the sun and the moon very close, but not quite.
Yeah, it's about 10 days after if the sun's 10 degrees, so it's about 10 days after the equinox. I mean, it's hard to look at this chart and not just go like, wow, if this was a birth chart, that is quite the stellium, right? Where you literally just have a whole line of, with the exception of Uranus, Jupiter, and Mars, in Pluto, everything else is conjunct, basically.
Yes.
In the stellium.
You know, I'm glad you said that, Laura, because yes, it's all in Pisces, with Neptune, of course, thrashing around at the very last degree. But meanwhile, all those Aries with the sun and the moon and our healing Chiron alchemy, Mars is out of bounds. It's like, you can stay there at that last degree. You can wallow in the spring, but we're steaming things up, the fire of Mars. Well,
yeah, I mean, I think particularly too, I mean, that it's hard, knowing that sort of we entered into this cycle of this repeated hitting this particular degree with Mercury and Venus right there. Right. That seems to speak to
heart and mind.
Because one of the things to think about with these retrogrades is it's also revisiting the point that it was at in March. Right. So it's that Venus, Mercury, Neptune conjunction in some ways gets reactivated with this point being revisited, even though neither Mercury or Venus are there for this current conjunction to that, or ingress
Right.
which makes me feel
this brings that energy back in.
Yes, and I love that because it really reminds a person, for our dreams, we need to bring our heart, Venus, what we love, what we desire, how we're feeling about things, with our mental ideas.
Well, and I think that this re-ingress, or this back into Pisces for Neptune, it doesn't have Mercury and Venus, or to your point. But what it does have there is Saturn now, kind of like going, okay, how are you going to structure all this? Now, Saturn was a little bit behind everybody there before at 24 degrees in that last chart. But when Neptune goes back into Pisces this time, it's going to come really close to Saturn. And,
that's right.
And hopefully that will form some type of structures that we need to release.
In fact, I think Saturn is at 25, so it's very close at that point. Let's lead on, because we have a bit. During our pre-chat, we were wondering what events happened to help kind of gear the consciousness. Not to go into this too long, I hope, because I would like to get
so amorphous right now. Like even trying to remember what happened in March feels like 5 years.
I know, a long time ago. So there was a lot about water. There happened to be during that month, because remember, it stayed at 29 degrees for a period of time from the 4th on. And it was World Glacier Day. Who would think, except that the world's largest iceberg had broken off. That was down in the Atlantic Ocean. And it was 1 trillion tons. So that caught, because it's calving. And of course, when there's melting like that, it's a danger sign. And there were ice storms and flooding. So perhaps that instigated the first World Glacier Day. But on the other business, as far as time, because again, it's timelessness, there was in Tanzania a bone tool that was discovered that pushed our thought of humanity back 1 million years to 1.5 million. So people had been working with bones as a tool. And the last was more on a recent basis, that in Lake Superior, they found a shipwreck called the Great Western, I believe, that had shipwrecked 130 years ago. But Laura, perhaps you want to mention, and Sean, just a little bit about the religious spirituality part, and then we'll jump into the current slide.
So this was, only about a month before Pope Francis transitioned, and then we got the new Pope. And so, but there was about a month before he died where there was fear he was going to die, and he was hospitalized. And so that was occurring during the last time Neptune was there. And it doesn't mean that the new Pope is somehow in jeopardy. It's this idea that Neptune being related to spirituality, Pisces being related to spirituality, and what there can be dissolving of old ideas or traditions, and the fact that the current Pope is in some ways similar to Francis in that he's very modern. He's the first American Pope, right? So there's this dissolving of old spiritual things, traditional things, the things that are timeless, and yet being some of that falling away and dissolving with Neptune.
Yeah, a changing of the guard for a large portion of the population globally that is related to that faith. Let's look at October 22nd. We have about 6 minutes here, 7 minutes. And this is October 22nd. Today is the 12th, so it's 10 days away. It'll be in the East Coast at 6:03:36 a.m. That would be 10:03:36 for the UK, or London, not necessarily London, but mean time. And Neptune is retrograde, just to remind people of that. And it happens to be that Pluto is out of bounds. That's another signature here. And
but Mars is not this time, and Mars is in a water sign again. I want to point that out, and not just in a water sign, but in a water sign in the 3rd decan, or the mastery decan, as I call it. So it was 23 in Cancer, out of bounds, when it went retrograde, And here it's doing its ingress, and it's at 20 Scorpio inbounds this time. And so there's this use of transformative energy that we now have access to that we didn't when it was at 29 last time.
Yeah.
And Mercury's right there. Yes, Mercury has shifted from being with
it's prominent.
Neptune to Mars.
Well, and being with Venus, I think to me what actually feels more significant is being conjunct Mars instead of Venus.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
right.
Well,
and so, and yet still
right,
my very wide orb in trine to Neptune. And so back in March, it was communicating what we wanted. And now we can communicate our actions. Potentially, we can act on things in a way that with Venus doesn't really like to take much. She's happy just lounging around and talking about the beauty of ideas in Pisces and being super philosophical. That's a super happy place for Venus conjunct Mercury in Pisces, is like, let's just talk about spirituality for hours and have some wine. But you put that with the Mercury and Mars, and now it's suddenly, oh, we can't just talk about it. We have to do something. It's, even though it's in a water sign, which isn't that proactive, fiery energy, it does call to action in a way that the Venus, Pisces, Mercury energy didn't.
And good points here. Because of that water trine, here you've got big ideas with Jupiter and a lot of action, needing to voice your opinions. This is major, having Mars and Mercury in Scorpio. It matters. It's like, what's our connection? How are we transforming ourselves? Where's our power? Where's our lacking power? And then with it's trying to Neptune of the visions that we're trying to retrieve. But meanwhile, our sun that's still at this tipping point in Libra that's saying, wait a minute, we have extremes here, but how are we balancing them out? It's having a lot of trouble because it is in a yod connecting. It's an adjustment with what's going new, all these new ideas that are connecting with the visions of the current moment when you get all that emotion happening. It's a real energetic transformation with that Pluto. It's networking out of bounds.
It's loose, but, to Laura's point too, the water trine, but part of that water trine is in that yod. So there's all that consideration, Libra consideration that sun is going to do, even if it's like, kind of like totally out there because it's at 29, right? But Saturn's mixed in there with Mars and Mercury and Jupiter, right? So Jupiter's influence comes in here in a big way too.
It's big, yes, and Cancer, yes, indeed. It throws us right back to that moon. Good point. Any closing ideas here, Laura? I know there are before we take a little break, which is in a moment.
Well, just to mention, because we haven't brought it up yet, and circling back to this idea of Venus, but Neptune being the higher expression of Venus, right?
Yes.
And so we still, even though Venus is nowhere near any of these bodies, from an aspect perspective, we get the higher octave of Venus in play with the Neptunian energy. And so thought of that universal love, Kuan Yin, Buddha of compassion, energy that has that potential, and how that incredible potential for compassion, incredible potential for empathy that we can give voice to because Mercury is in play. It doesn't just stay amorphous, but we could actually be proactively communicating with it. And maybe that's part of that Mars energy, is proactively communicating compassion.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we will have much to be talking about as it sees leading up here in the next 12 days. We'll be right back. This is Talk Cosmos, Planet Buzz, 29 degrees of Neptune. That's Neptune, 29 degrees retrograde with Sean Kelley and Dr. Laura Tad and myself. We'll be right back. Thanks. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Libra,
ruled dually by Venus. By leaving the lower hemisphere of the self, the energy of Libra enters the arena where the completed self meets the other than self to form a relationship based on partnership. As a cardinal air sign on the descendant angle, represented by the equinox of equal light, Libra's energy learns through comparison and relationships, with the intention to integrate duality and polarities.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Wherever you go, Alternative Talk 1150 is here for you.
Hi, we're right back. At this moment, we'll just take a little brief getaway, whatever. Pardon me about that. Just to remind you about ourselves, what's coming up. Sean Kelley, evolutionaryastro.com. You can contact him there. And Dr. Laura Tad at Mythic Sky. Let's hear about what you have here, Laura, with your story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been given monthly talks in my community here in just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, just talking about the upcoming astrological weather at a place called the Soul Barn here in my community. So it's a gathering space above the stables at a barn where they do equine therapy and they do sound bowl healing and Reiki all above the horses. It's a lovely spot. And then I have my own podcast, Mythic Sky Storytime. And throughout this year, I've got one episode left to record. I've been doing a series that I'm calling Cosmic Costumes, where I'm going through for the entire episode, focusing on a single sign and looking at it from a mythological perspective and its general meaning in terms of mode and element. And then I have a guided meditation that closes every episode.
Nice.
So you can develop your own relationship with the sign. And then in February, I will be helping out at the Goddess Awakening Retreat for the 4th year in a row. And this takes place in Nicaragua on Playa El Coco, which is this beautiful beach right on the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, about 12 kilometers from the Costa Rican border. You can see Costa Rica from the beach. We're so close to Costa Rica. And so there's a combination of this upcoming year, next year. So we do every morning starts with yoga. I do a late morning workshop, and then usually afternoons are free because it gets pretty hot. And then in the evenings after dinner, there's a melt class, which is a form of working with the fascia for body work. So it's a beautiful spot. And yeah.
They can go to your website, mythicsky.com, find out a little bit more, or email Laura. It'll be beautiful. Absolutely. A good time for the winter spot. People to go where it's warm and heal and transform and find community. For Talk Cosmos, I put the recent ones that seem relevant. We had, in fact, Neptune and Aries with Sean on Emerging Truth. That's the one I made reference to. It's on March 9th. You can find that in the playlist if you look for it. But on recent terms, the equinox and the vibrational astrology always gives a wonderful messages for the entire season. It's quite illuminating. And last week, there was a special panel. It was sort of a fireside chat about the 28-29 degrees. Actually, I shouldn't have put the 28-29. It was supposed to be 29-0 degrees. That's a goof there, because it's that bridge just between the endings and beginnings. Nonetheless, next week we begin with the new moon. Continue speaking. Okay, I don't know if you went away or if I went away. But this is a good point. We just went into the next year. It is January 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is when Neptune is direct at 29:59 Pisces. It will be, well, just thinking of the themes that we've been speaking of, we see that Neptune now is so close, within minutes of
just shy of a degree
with Saturn as it connects on the 20th, I think, of February. Yeah. Meanwhile, looking at our heroes, Mercury is with the heart again of Venus. But again, we have Pluto now with transformational, with Mars, meaning that they're deciding to activate our terms of social networking, the groups. Who are we talking to? Who's our group? I'll pause. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if I look back at the 22nd, the chart we were just on, where the Uranus was wrapped up in that yacht, and we didn't really touch on that, but we did leave off with like the beautiful words that Laura threw out there about the compassionate Buddha that, we see at the 29 mark of Neptune and Pisces there. But the Uranus piece was in trine to an out of bounds Pluto. And now here, when Neptune is now at that 29:59 mark and about to launch forward into the Aries realm again, Mars again, it keeps coming up here for me, is now conjunct that spot and conjunct Pluto. And Uranus now is back in Taurus, all the way back to 27. So Uranus is kind of like going, well, hey, like, how can I, asking himself questions, I think, about, well, how do I, flip those opposites into the, that instantaneous, instantaneous
moment.
Kind of integration of opposites that Uranus brings, that shock. And now it's like, okay, well, and Taurus, I think about structure, and I think about, and it's Gemini is trying to communicate it all. Taurus, it's kind of like putting it all into values and things. And it's like Pluto gave it some stuff to kind of consider. And now with Mars there, those considerations, I think, are really being kind of catapulted into the now what is a conjunction of Saturn and Neptune together here at this moment. And that to me is like, wow, okay, here comes a spiritual structuring that's going to have values that Uranus had made the sun aware of in that yacht. So I think the 22nd is a really important thing to consider here. And then on the 26th of January, mark your calendar maybe for the 22nd, what you were kind of considering in your life, because it's going to come up in a different way on the 26th, and you're going to take different action around it. It's going to be transformative and kind of that last gasp of that seed that's buried, to go back and reference the quote that Laura surfaced here for us.
Yeah, I like that so much, because yes, of what's been buried, or what we intentionally or unconsciously have done, because of that stellium in Aquarius with its modern ruler, Uranus, that is really in a set, resilient sign. Happens to be right on my Mars, which will be interesting. I'm listening to this going, okay, Sue, start making your journal, which I do, but this will be more intentional. But truly, it's a momentous, because at the same time, I'm trying to look at that square with, is that the moon? Yes, the moon with Venus. So there's emotionally this idea of where can we make changes with what have been our goals, what has been our foundational, because Earth is always some kind of foundational premise, but it wants to be a survivor. So how can you survive? your goals, your dreams, your hearts, your directions, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and I think, we can't, that Mars-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, you can't actually go the direction you thought you were going to go. There's no way around that with that conjunction, right? You have, yes, Mars is about drive and Pluto's about transformation. So in a different sign, it could be you're really able to transform things, but you've got this added variable, this added layer of Aquarius that it is going to be revolutionary. It's going to be out of the box. It's maybe not going to take you where you thought it was. And being able to, I often think of Aquarius, and Sean, you will understand this and maybe could even explain it more than I can, because I relate it to surfing in a lot of ways in terms of how you have to respond to the ocean and
It's like
catching
crest.
a wave, right?
Yeah.
Or how you have to, if you are caught in a riptide, you have to swim sideways. You will die of exhaustion trying to swim to shore if you try to swim straight to shore if you're caught in a riptide. You have to go sideways. And so there's a piece of that Aquarius energy that I always relate to, that sort of energy. And so it's like, have to be innovative and in the right second, right? Because in surfing, you catch the wave at the right moment or you don't catch it.
Things are changing so fast. And Laura, I'm inspired here to pick up a thought as you were speaking, because yes, absolutely. We have a quincunx, meaning that is a source in a transit, especially, it's a real adjustment. But it's an adjustment that, yes, that your immediacy of connecting with the moment wants or needs is imperative to connect with. However, in this quincunx, it is with the heart and the, Venus and Mercury, as we've spoken of, that are essentially within a degree here together. And quincunx to the south node in Virgo. So it's being, Mercury is, of course, ruling it, but how do we discern? Virgo wants to discern. It wants us to get some sense of perfection or how to fix things, how to organize it so that we have something that works. But it is a real conundrum to put that. It can't. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about this immediacy that everything is changing so much in the transformational sense of the current moment. It's very
you
challenging.
just have to respond, or like if you grew up
no
in the
other
Northeast,
choice.
it's like you hit ice in the winter and you just have to respond. Like
right.
And it's counterintuitive, right? You don't break if you hit ice. Anybody who lives somewhere that's snowy, you don't break when you hit ice, even though that's like the instinct.
But with that, the past is something that needs to be released in some sense. So I think having that attitude that, yes, as we're quickly adjusting, which there's no way out of, that it is, with a quincunx, it's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be part of that whole system that helps us navigate through. And but it'll carve off. Maybe it'll melt off or whatever, like those calving, breaking off. It'll be gone. And somehow how we discern and look forward is going to be a little different.
I see a whole bigger revolution with AI than we ever thought.
Ah, yes.
The technology is going to, and it's going to be disruptive. I see a lot of disruption in that chart. Maybe these charts speak to that disruption a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we could, there's so much here and we only have our hour, and I just value so much all of your input. So pardon me as I push on with a little crest. We're kind of always going at that crest, catching the wave, right? Mm-hmm. These are two bi-wheels, just as a notice, because they in themselves could go on forever. But look at what the United States, since we are here and we're like calling out the elephant in the room, that as of the 22nd, that's the one on the left with Pisces at that anoretic 29 degree. And then looking at the 26th that we've just discussed, like before the break and afterwards, what's really essential is here we have our Jupiter, which will be coming up on Mercury, so strong, conjunct that 24 degree in Cancer, looking at everything that Cancer represents. We are a Cancer nation. And then it will shift to our identity. We're not just thinking about it, but it becomes our identity, which will be part of that whole mix that we were talking about.
And what's fascinating to me about that is that when it hit 20, it hit 24, and what happened to the government?
Yeah.
It's like it shuts down.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out. How long will this last? That's true. We don't know. And what does that mean? We know the military is getting paid, but like somebody said, what about the CIA? Yeah. What about all these other groups? It's interesting.
I mean, Burbank has been closed for 2 days because there's no air traffic controllers.
Whoa, these are huge. I used to work at the Burbank airport. Yeah. I know that is like, and they do have shuttles to, oh my goodness. I mean, it's
a major
airplane. Major. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on another basis, I will bring this up as far as what's happening now, just as a little takeaway because of the ocean. Like, where do I see that? Well, we're talking about Neptune, aren't we? And that's why. But in Hawaii here, in our county, Hawaii County, which is a big island, is one big county versus the other islands. But the councilmen were really discussing the idea of having all foodware, any plastic foodware, be banned in retro to thinking of the ocean, which of course we know has this terrible size of Texas, maybe is bigger now, that's just plastic floating around there that I wish all collectively the energies of the world would just get in there and work on. But that would be a very, they're contemplating it. They're going to talk about it in the future.
Maybe the world would go to sticks.
Yeah, right. Well, a couple of the fast foods have gone all to like paper products that are recyclable. But I wish a lot of manufacturing would do that. Because here we have the nodes activated. And I think that might be part of how I could relate to it would be our strategy that we're coming up with. Palace is with the south node of the nation, which is the innovative networking, you could say, in Aquarius. And then the suns are at that point too.
And then, I mean, just looking at what's been occurring with this ingress back and forth in and out of Aries means that Neptune is going back and forth over the IC of the US.
The foundational point.
And so I think that's becomes, even though like it's not, it already did that, but it got to 2 in its retro when it had ingressed into Aries. So this year it crossed that point and then has gone back. And we'll do it again.
You sized it up.
And so I think that has a lot to do with how we are experiencing this. Also, because Neptune can be illusion and delusion. It isn't always healthy and
no, we don't have anything to ground it. It's out there empirically in the sky. Yes,
and so as Neptune goes back and forth over the IC, it's like our most fundamental self being dissolved and not clear what it is and dissolved again and what is real, because Neptune in general isn't very tangible. And then you put it in Pisces that it's completely amorphous.
And there was no, excuse me for jumping in here, Laura, but there was no Earth. We forgot to mention that. I remember we'd observed it before. I observed it. But coming up here in this cycle, going up to the 22nd, the only Earth would be the South Node. So yes, of course, we're picking up those seeds from the past and we're dreaming about them, but yet we don't have any Earth to plant them in yet. We're still trying to choose that.
Yeah, except for that chart on the 26th, when we're back to Neptune direct at 29 there, and it's and we've got Uranus in Taurus, we got the moon in Taurus,
yes, of course,
ingress in, as well as the North Node, or the South Node.
One of those.
Yeah. But Taurus is huge. That's right.
Yeah.
It's gone back over there. Absolutely, at that 27 degree. Well, shall we see when we're out of the shadow? Not to really, just to let people know they can look
I
at
love this chart. I really
Oh.
love this chart.
And tell us why. Yes. You've peaked
Well,
our...
Neptune and Saturn, who were playing in Pisces, have now moved completely on. Like, and so here we are, we have the rebirth of the spiritual warrior that has now happened. We have a sense of purpose. We have structure to add to that. So it's almost like all the crazy sideways, and Laura, that was great. That was a great analogy to use, especially the riptide swimming sideways across the riptide.
Mm-hmm.
All that craziness is now like, okay, here's how we're going to apply it. And Saturn, which is like really like the Capricorn thing. It wants to be slow and methodical and everything, has now found itself in Aries going, okay, well, wait, I have to make impulsive, I'll use an Aries word there, a structure. I have to impulsively create structure to support this new direction. And so this to me is like not only has the match been struck, but now the match has been placed to the kindling, and the kindling is starting to...
Oh, beautiful. That is beautiful. We have 4 minutes, folks, or 3 minutes. So no, don't be sorry at all. But again, we're on that wave that we're talking about. And if you're going to surf, because we see it in the television all the time, it doesn't stop. You're moving all the time. So I think we're feeling that. I love that analogy. Thank you, Laura. So let's just jump. We won't even talk about it much, but looking at the history, if you want to find out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I always find it helpful, maybe with my 9th house Virgo moon.
Yeah, but we only have a couple seconds.
How things that have happened historically with Neptune at this degree, right? So going back 2 cycles ago, we get King James II of England. And interestingly, he was trying to create religious tolerance. And this was at a time, right, just a century after we get the King Henry VIII and his, splitting
Reformation, right?
No, that was Luther. That was different. But this Anne Boleyn, him wanting to divorce his wife, creating what's now the Church of England, and all of the war and fighting that was happening in England between the Catholics and the Prods, and King James II trying to create peace.
Exactly. Laura,
which is that Neptune again governing spirituality and religion.
Yep. It's a good theme carrying on along with the Pope. Exactly. So here to have this equality, at least as an ideal, back to the ideal of Pisces, and the fact that the largest church was consecrated after the burning. And on a more recent basis, because we have very little time left here, folks, the music will go on. 1861, the Civil War, which we realized, but the first photograph, and it was a tartan, the Scottish.
First color photograph, not the first photograph.
Color, thank you. Color photograph, big distinction. That's very important. And it was, interestingly, a ribbon here as indicated of the Scottish design. So perhaps we can take, as we go into the music, a little bit about what is today of the film, music, or other factors that you want to, because film and music are such a powerful communication. There's other ways besides just linear mentality, because the heart, weaves in our lullabies, our heart rhythms, everything.
Well, I think, one of the ways that in this back and forth over these next few months, we may see more, and we're just starting to see more political music come out, and that may be even more true once Neptune gets back into Aries. But
like Arlo Guthrie back in the 1920s or something, who was fighting people about the unions and stuff. I hadn't thought of that, but politically speaking.
But I think that can be, just and with AI, right, that how that is going to impact music and film and television, right, of what's being replaced, how is it what's being augmented or supported, as opposed to just dissolved.
It's coming, whether Hollywood wants it or not. Whether, it's coming.
That was another point. Remember, it was on the instantly. It was back on the news about AI with the film and the actors of the film being concerned, which had been brought up back in March when it was there, which is a real reality. I know there's thought that movies are going to become germane to anybody, like you and I. We could create, our avatar and be that great person, whichever. Top cosmic trio. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Laura, Ted, and Sean Kelley. And I don't know what's happened to the music, if it's just me, but it's a little wonky. I think the recording will be better, and I apologize. Is it just on my end?
I'm hearing it too.
Yeah, we're shifting between Piscean and Aries. This theme is happening. Ideas are fermenting. May our voyage be one of some safety and pleasure of life.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.